Lee Webster is the Director of HR Standards at the Society for Human Resources Management. He spoke with us about developing global HR organizational standards. Why is it important that the HR profession adopts organizational standards?
Well, one of the things that we find, and our members in the Society of Human Resource Management have said, but also for people outside the organization have said, is in order to be a true profession, you have to have minimum effective measures of performance for the organization that you're in. And so in order to do that, you have to have a methodology to create it. And so in order to help that happen, we decided to create these standards.
How would these standards benefit the HR practitioner?
Well, in a very tactical way, they help the practitioner because they finally have those performance measures that they can look to and say, we are meeting standards, we are performing to a certain level of expectation already when they talk to their corporate leaders, particularly when they look for resources, or when they just want to describe how well they're doing their job. But on a more global level, it will help facilitate the movement of talent from one organization or from one country to another. It'll also allow you to compare your performance of the organization and how you're doing with respect to HR functions with other companies, whether it's in your industry or outside your industry, so you have a pretty good measure of what you're doing and how well you're doing it. And on a broader level, we think it'll be a much more efficient use of resources overall, because now that you understand how well you're operating and you can compare it with other organizations, you can collaborate with other companies to do better with the resources you have. You can also use those resources more effectively because you understand what you need to do to get better, which we really don't right now.
What can be done to establish these standards?
Both domestically and internationally, there's two different ways to create standards. One way, both domestically, is to actually work with organizations within your own country. For example, in the United States, the American National Standards Institute, to create a structure by which people come together. In fact, SHRM's doing it virtually, to talk about what the standard should be and then actually how to make them. And so in the domestic measure, what we're doing is we're getting people together by teleconference and by virtual meetings using software, and so that they can discuss, well, what does it mean to have a standard in a particular practice of HR? These folks are using software as well to develop the actual documents, to share the documents and to manage the knowledge, so that eventually when it reaches a point where everybody has a consensus, and by consensus we mean a common understanding and a common agreement of what should be in the standard, we then make it available to the public to take a look at, to think about, to comment on, and then with all that feedback finally come to what is the standard. Our intentions are as well, as once the standard's done, is we're going to share it to everybody using Adobe Acrobat, so that each company or organization or individual who wants to use these standards can just get them open source and use them, and also provide feedback to us. On an international level, it's roughly the same thing, except the members of these bodies, these groups that come together, instead of being individuals or companies, it's actually countries nominating people to come together and to talk about these standards. They could come from actually the earlier group, the national group, sending their ideas up to the international group and saying, hey, we've got a really great idea for a standard. Why don't you all take a look at this and decide whether it should be a global standard? So we're excited about it because we think, number one, it creates a collaborative opportunity both at the domestic level, but also it feeds into the international community and allows them an opportunity to create these standards too. The last thing I'll say about it, the standards are voluntary. It's not like the laws or the regulations in each country. So if you don't think this fits for you, or in fact if you're doing more than a standard, we encourage you to do more and continue to do what you're doing. However, if you don't have that handhold, if you don't have that process or that structure or that threshold you need to get started in this area of human resource management, then we think the standards will give you that step up that you need.